Okay, fine, I'll drive. Take the bags, I'll take the bike.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you don't know this beat, it's your girl KylerB coming at you with a new video. So today we're going to be talking about The Summer I Turned Pretty Season 3 Episode 5, and let's get right into this video. So this episode was the Conrad point of view episode, POV episode, basically directed by Jenny Han, written by Jenny Han, all that. Jenny Han was basically behind this entire episode. So basically we're picking up after, Jeremiah has to go back to Boston for work. So therefore Belly is stuck at the summer house with Conrad. Conrad decides to stay, cancel his flight, going back to California because, Belly was sad, she was crying, whatever. So Belly's, stuck planning this wedding. It's been almost a week. The week is almost over. Conrad has basically been avoiding Belly this entire time since being in the house. But, it's July 4th weekend. So, we started off with, the hug that Belly gave him just for, making the muffins and staying. He's just basically, that. He replayed that, scene in his mind. Bro, his point of view is just, he really sees Belly, his sunshine. So, essentially, with this episode, you kind of get the backstory, basically what's really going down. Because people understand that there's a 4-year time jump, which, certifies or, centers around Jeremiah's and Belly's, relationship. But 4 years prior, Belly and Conrad were together. And obviously, it was during the time where Susanna died and, passed away. So Conrad was bearing the most of the situation. And obviously, he didn't know how to, deal with his emotions. He still doesn't know how to deal with his emotions because 4 years later, he's still not over Belly. Hasn't been with anybody since Belly. And, now it's he's still thinking about her because he's basically, Belly's just the one that got away for him. Not push her away or did something different, him and Belly probably would have still been together, because that was the questions that he'd been asking, if I would have told her the things, will we still be together, will we still have dinner together, Like I was saying in the last video, I was like, Jeremiah has the car, or whoever had the car or whatever, who's gonna drive her to and from cousins, who's gonna be there for her, because she didn't drive up there, Jeremiah did. So I was just like, okay, since Conrad's there, she's asking Conrad hey, can you give me a ride to the grocery store, can you do this, So Conrad left breakfast out for Belly to also eat, and Belly was just like, I didn't know if I could eat that, and he's like, why didn't you ask? And she was like, oh, she's like, I don't know, whatever. And then the thing is, he was like, anything I buy you can have. I was like, okay, all right, anything you want you can have too. But anyway, he tried to keep her distance from her. That's why he went to California, obviously. So with this entire episode is basically, you're getting the reasoning, both sides of the story of what happened and what went down with Conrad and Belly's relationship and why it did not work out. We have this whole wedding between Belly and Jeremiah on top of that is just the worst of the worst is happening to him. He has to be around basically the love of his life, who's getting married to his brother, and he still has feelings for her, and he can't say anything about it because he doesn't want to jeopardize their relationship. So, but he still wants to be supportive of them both. So it's very a tricky situation. So we started first with them going, her doing the cake shopping, whatever. Jeremiah's over here talking about, oh, the cake is the one thing that he wanted to do for the wedding, so therefore he's gonna put the $750 on a credit card and he'll pay it off. I'm like, you guys are already struggling, so for a whole cake you're gonna use money that you don't have for a cocoa cake. Yeah, that whole scene was just really, Jeremiah? Anyway, he stayed at the office as an intern to try butter up to his father. I mean, it did work out in the end, but the only reason it worked out in the end is because Adam called Conrad basically saying do you agree with the decision that him and, Jeremiah and Belly are making? He's like, it's not my decision. I mean, I don't care if it's, a good decision, but you still got to be supportive or you will lose Jeremiah. So if Conrad did not, speak to him or try to say this is what they want to do, be supportive of them, because, Adam was just like I lost you, and Conrad didn't answer. He just kind of moved along. He just you know what, I got to go. So Adam just realized, well, since he lost one son to something, he's not going to try to lose another son. So therefore, he kind of most likely gave in, especially after Jeremiah made that move to stay back at the office and, said, well, I'm going to support this relationship, blah, blah, blah. You can have the wedding at the clubhouse instead of the house. And, since I'm paying for it, whatever. Anyways, back to Conrad and Belly's, journey situation. So there was flashbacks in this episode because they had a flashback to, basically before prom, the infamous prom where Belly and Conrad broke up, because he didn't tell her about the entire thing with Susanna. So Belly came into the room. I mean, I didn't know he was at her house, whatever. So Belly came into the room and, he was just thinking about everything that's going on with his mom. And, his mom's sickness has gotten worse. But he didn't tell Belly that at that point. Belly's just thinking you know what, she's going to pull through, da-da-da-da. She's going to make it out. But he already knows, yeah, no, that's not happening. She's about to go. So prom is coming up. He's like, don't worry about prom. I got it, da-da-da-da. She's like, Belly, Susanna's going to pull through. But since she still had that naive, ness in her, spirit, basically in the sense that, she didn't want to break her spirit in terms of hey, bad things do happen to good people sometimes, and as unfortunate as it is, it does happen. So, Susanna, even though she was a good person, whatever, she unfortunately is going to not beat the sickness. So he didn't able to tell her because, obviously she's thinking about prom, all the all this good stuff. So he kept it to himself. They had a time. He flashed back to that situation. So he was like, maybe if I told her the truth about what was going on with his mother, maybe she would understand what happened, da-da-da-da. He had another flashback to basically the time where they were in season 2, where they were at the hotel, and, Belly was in the bed, Jeremiah and Conrad on either sides of the bed of her, and he was like, I still love you, I still, would like to be with you. But he then remembers that on his mother's deathbed, he, basically promised, Susanna, hey, I am gonna watch out for Jeremiah, since he's the oldest, he's gonna watch out for Jeremiah, whatever. And, so he was just you know what, to not mess with Jeremiah and, what he's going through, he basically, in a sense, lied to Belly for the first time and told her, no, forget what I said, I lied, da-da-da-da, and, go be with Jeremiah. If he actually stood on 10 toes and basically was yeah, I still want to be with you, and not basically, kind of gave up to Jeremiah, he's like, what, would we still be together? So he made a promise to Susanna about, being behind Jeremiah, whatever. So this is why the only way for, him to kind of survive that relationship is for him to not be around them all the time. When Jeremiah came back, it was just the whole day that they had together, that was fun, and him getting to express his feelings to Belly kind of got ruined, because with that Honey I Home, yeah, that whole day was ruined. He was just I cannot be here. Even if July 4th, fireworks is coming on, I'm gonna go to sleep. I can't be around you guys like that. So he just got up and left, because he's yeah, no, he would rather, be somewhere else than be around them, all lovey-dovey with the situation. So the peach scene, when she was eating the peach and he wiped it off, I was oh, he forgot himself. He forgot. He was oh, yeah, we're not together. because Belly, she was going through, she's I feel I'm carrying all the weight in the relationship, especially with this whole wedding planning situation. So after, she told him that about the situation, he tried help, because to be honest, Conrad doesn't really have to be there for Belly. No offense, no shade, no tea. He really does not have to be there for Belly. I mean, they're no longer together, whatever. He has to be there for Jeremiah because that's his brother. But Belly, he doesn't really have to be there for Belly. But you know what? He still loves her because, like, he didn't have to come look for her and pick up her bike and put the bike in the trunk or whatever. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to, like, you know, take her to Michael's. But, you know, when Jeremiah was the one supposed to be taking her to Michael, he didn't have to do that. You know, he made that U-turn so quick to get to the peach, you know, farm. He didn't have to do that. Like, he didn't have to make her dinner. He didn't have to ask her, like, oh, you still hungry? Like, oh, let me eat dinner. Like, he didn't have to do that. Like, at all. Like, he even opened up in this episode and told her, like, the truth about him getting fired from the clinic job. You know, and told her the truth. And she was like, you know, you have to work on your hero complex because, you know, nobody's perfect. Like, it's okay to fail sometimes and, like, pick back up yourself and whatever. So, I mean, this episode is really good because it's just basically the start of, you know, the BellyConrad journey. Basically, I mean, people forget that since the first episode back in season 3, Agnes was like, you're still hung up on Belly, the only person you ever loved. So I don't understand why people are so confused about him still thinking about Belly and thinking about, like, if roles were reversed or if something different had happened, if he didn't lie to her about him still loving her, like, what would have changed? Belly, you know, obviously she's an unreliable narrator, so therefore she doesn't know what's going on. He also lied again in his mind, saying that, like, California was a better place or a good place. He just said, like, this is only good because he's far away from Boston. Like, that's the only reason why he picked that place, because he can't be around them. The only thing is that, I mean, he's still in therapy, so it's not like he's just like, oh, he's fully, you know, different. He still worked on his feelings. Like, it took him a long time, maybe 2-3 weeks, to actually open up and say, like, hey, I actually lost a clinic job because when Steven got into the car accident, my mind was somewhere else instead of on my work. Like, it took him a long time to even open up with that fact. So for him to even open up about him loving Belly still, it will take a lot, you know. And the thing is, he still doesn't know about Jeremiah cheating on Belly and Cabo. Basically, from his point of view, he's just basically saying, like, everything that happened with Susanna, like his promise to Susanna about taking care of Jeremiah, you know, him trying to put his brother's feelings before his own because he is the older brother. Obviously, even the flashback to when they were kids, that, you know, both her brother and Jeremiah left her for us, and, you know, Conrad was the one to stay back and help her. And, you know, help her ride the bike. She was riding a bike with training wheels, and he believed in her to ride a bike with no training wheels, take his own bike, and, you know, he would jog behind her. Like, hello? Hello? And the thing is that, you know, he pulled up with his car to pick up her bike or whatever, and, like, you know, you can't care all that. And he still let her drive his own car. Like, I'm like, hello? Because I'm just like, he was like, you know, like, she was like, oh, let me just do this and I got it. He still took the bike. He didn't care. But he still let her drive. I was like, okay, you still let her drive. She drove around. You know, they went to Michael's. They went to the, what's it called, the flower shop. And, yeah, he was just like, you know, you can just use my mom's hydrangeas. Like, you don't need to spend $5,000 on some flowers. Like, hello? Like, you just use my mom's hydrangeas. And then even the wedding, the flower shop lady thought they were going to get married. And he was like, no, we're not getting married. Like, unfortunately not. But, you know, this was such a great episode. I don't understand why people are not understanding that this guy, has been said, like, for a million times, he's still not over Belly. Like, that, like, he's still not over Belly. Like, what are we not understanding with the whole, well, she's the only person you know, he ever loved. Him being distant from the entire family. Like, if he was so over it, like, he's going to therapy. I mean, his sessions are not over. He's still actively in therapy. So I don't really understand how that's, like, you know, confusing to the viewers that are like, oh, if you made a promise to Susanna, why are you still, you know, obsessing over your brother's girl? Like, I mean, he's just, like, the only way he's trying to be supportive, you know, reluctantly supportive, but I mean, it is what it is, you know. I think he never let Belly made that decision for her own self, in terms of, he pushed her away for the prom situation, and then when, you know, he said, like, I still want to be with you, he still took it back, and for the sake of his brother's feelings. So if he actually, like, say, like, hey, you know, whatever with my brother's feelings, and like actually, you know, give Belly the actual choice to say like, hey, I still want to be with you. You're engaged to my brother. Who do you want to still be with? But because she thinks like Conrad is not on the table for her at all. I mean, it's been 4 years, so I don't think she's gonna think about Conrad anyways. But she does flash back to Conrad and the Christmas scene. Like, if this episode was solely Conrad's point of view, when it's Belly's point of view, why is she still flashbacking to Christmas where nothing happened? She still thinks about Conrad too. She still thinks about him too, but she believes like he's over her. It's done. Da 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 da. So, anyways, that was episode 5. BellyConrad, Jenny Han directed, written, all that. So can't wait to see what happens in the next episode, because Conrad, I don't know, you know, if he's gonna be be so supportive of this whole situation. Like, he couldn't even be there for the July 4th fireworks. I don't know how he can be here for an entire wedding. But yeah, that wedding's not happening. So, and yeah, let's get back to Pierce, because I'm like, he doesn't even know that she got in and she's canceling because for Jeremiah and this wedding. Like, yeah. But anyways, this was episode 5. I'm up. Obviously, you know where I stand. You know, Team Conrad over here. No shade, no tea to Jeremiah. Anyhow, if you like the video, comment down below. Let me know your thoughts, comments, concerns. And subscribe to my channel. Subscribe. Anyway, thank you guys for watching this video. Peace.